What is port forwarding? Why do you even care about port forwarding for building automation? Hopefully, throughout this video, you figured this out. So, if you look at this first part of this address up here, you have 192.168.1.20. That's the IP address of a device. Anything after this colon is a port number. So, think of a port like an extension number. This is the main phone number, and then you have an extension to get right where you want to get. So ports are just logical connections. It's used by services and programs to exchange data between computers. So it allows computers on the internet to access a computer or services on a private network if you have a port forwarding rule set up on your router. So remote desktop is an example. It uses port 3389. So if that was set up on your router, you could access a computer remotely, so offsite. But a router doesn't know what to do without setting up port forwarding rules. IT is going to be setting this up. If you had your home router, you could set it up if you wanted, but IT is going to set this up in a building automation environment, and they're not going to leave port 3389 open. That's a known port that hackers try to hack. It's just asking for problems. But if you set it up in the router, then it knows that if anything comes to this router and it's looking for this port number and can port forward it to this specific device and that device can be accessed remotely, then you can remote desktop to that computer. So here's kind of a picture of how it would work. Let's say this is your little Windows appliance. It has your building automation software on it. Its address is 192.168.1.20 and remote desktop is 3389. You have the port forwarding rule set up in the router. You're on the internet. You want to access that desktop remotely. So you use remote desktop. This router knows to port forward to 3389 and you know the IP address. So you just access this thing remotely. Again, IT isn't going to leave that port open. You'd have to VPN in or something. They're not just going to leave it open to the web so people can try to hack that all day long. The reason it matters for building automation is because if you don't have port forwarding rules set up, you may not be able to see the web pages. So typically, in the past, web pages were served on port 80, which was an HTTP connection, so hypertext transfer protocol. Now pages are typically served on 443, so HTTPS, which just stands for hypertext transfer protocol secure. All that means is an encrypted connection. So all the data isn't just sitting out there in the open. In Telefront, its default port is 8080, so TCP 8080. Remote desktop again is 3389. IT is not going to leave that open. You need to know what ports you need open. So when you're talking to IT and they're trying to set it up, you need to let them know these are the ports I need open. Otherwise, the building automation server is not going to work as you expect it to. So if you were doing in Telefront, TCP 8080 is the default port for serving web pages. So you would want allowed traffic in. You would want that port forwarding rule. Traffic out ports, there's DNS, so domain name server, so TCP 53 and UDP 53. Windows updates uses 443 and 80. Again, 80 is probably going to be shut off. HTTP was port 80, so that's hypertext transfer protocol. HTTPS is hypertext transfer protocol secure, so an encrypted connection. So those are web pages that are secure. NTP is network time protocol. So that uses ports TCP 123 and UDP 123. SMTPS, so simple mail transfer protocol. If you want to email out alarms, the default port would be 465. If you have a Jace, there's different ports. So 4911 is your Fox S secure station connection. So that allows you to connect to the station. 5011 is a platform. 443 would be web access. So 1911 and port 80 are typically not used anymore. So 1911 was used for Fox Niagara Workbench connection, but has been replaced by the Fox S or secure port 4911. It's the same reason that the HTTP port 80 went from that to 443, which is an HTTPS connection. So most new stations out of the box have the older unsecure ports disabled in a Jace. But these are the different ports you'd have to talk to IT about. That way, your building automation server works as you expect.